Hello, hello, and welcome to the podcast. I'm very lucky today to be joined by the one and only Lee O'Brien, who is the top boss man at IAD UK. Lee, thank you for coming on the podcast today, first of all.
Thanks, mate. Thank you very much. Appreciate the invite.
More than welcome. So people can get a good idea about yourself. Can you share a little bit of your personal journey, kind of leading up to the point where you've been spearheading IED in the UK?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a bit of a lifer in a state agency. So I started whilst sixth form, working like 3 nights a week and a Saturday stuffing envelopes back in the day where I'd rock up at about 5 o'clock and there'd be this whole desk full of printed details ready to go out to customers with their names written on. And I would be in there stuffing envelopes in the evening and sort of helping around the office on a Saturday. So it's the only thing actually that I've ever done outside of part-time work. And I went straight into it at the end of sixth form and got my first job in Sequence. So I worked at Sequence when they were only Sequence at the time in the William H. Brown branch in Hoddesdon. Went in as a junior negotiator and learned some great stuff. You know, they got some brilliant sort of onboarding training. Went over to Tring for the week and started on the journey of estate agency at that time. And work with some absolute powerhouses as well. We were a very successful office and some really established guys that worked in that team and learned a lot. Fast forward a little bit from there, we sort of really felt some frustrations within that business and the way in which it was structured, and really the only thing that we could do was actually take that risk and go out and start on our own. Prompted by the secretary in the office that was chatting to both myself and what became David, my business partner, as we were frustrated, and she said, "You two should go out on your own," and that sort of just sparked something within us. And that evening we were out looking at premises and just sort of went on that journey of, well, actually, if this is our only way to develop as an agent after the sort of 2 years that I'd spent, David had been there about 4 years at the time. And we looked for some premises and we started upon our own sort of journey into building an agency. The first town that we looked at was where we had both gone to school, but it was too expensive. The rent was too expensive. So we then looked at an adjoining village that was just outside of the main town that what we deemed had two very sleepy agents in it. And we found some good value premises on the high street, and we both took out personal loans and we went on that journey to go and start our own business. And that was back in 2004. So I was 20 at the time. And just two of us in a partnership started what was David Lee, which we took us a little while, but we got there between us in naming the business. And we went on our journey of going in and trying to disrupt this little sleepy village in 2004. We then built a very traditional model. So we then started a lettings business in 2007, and we opened off a second office in 2010 and our third office in 2016. And over that time, we built a fantastic business. We were winning awards and growing staff numbers, and we just had this ambition to keep building in the same way. A few things happened between sort of 2016 to 2019. One of our managers had a really serious accident. It was a real keystone to our business, and it really disrupted like how we were thinking about the business and how we were structuring the management side of the business. And we started to think that actually growing by offices and managers and layers of staff was probably not the way that the business was going to be of the future. We were getting our own frustrations in keeping high street premises open while we were actually really only ever doing business when we were out on the road. And we started to look at creating our own self-employed program, which we called the Associate Program. So in 2019, as going into 2020, we scaled down the physical operations of the business and closed the three offices. And then we reopened in a central hub, which was a modern barn conversion on a farm and just outside of the main town. And we centralized our operations and launched our associate program in the middle of lockdown, really, when we were locked down in 2020. We'd been in our new office for 3 months and then were told to close the door on it. And it was at that point that it really pushed us to launch this associate self-employed program. One of the benefits I think that we'd made in that moment was that we'd already restructured the business to be very fleet of foot and operational in a hybrid way, with centralized databases and phone systems and servers in the cloud and everything that we needed to be able to send people home and operate immediately. So the self-employed model was what we really wanted to lean into at that point, and brought on our first agent in June of 2020. Over the following 3 years, we then built that business, and we had 20 self-employed agents in the market, and had no aspirations or ideas of actually selling our business at that point. We were probably 2 years into a 5-year plan, and we were approached by IAD. Hadn't heard of IAD before. IAD are the biggest estate agency brokerage business in Europe, and they wanted to launch in the UK, but they wanted to do this via acquisition and bring in a solid team that knew the market well, and that could help them roll that out into the UK. And after having numerous conversations with various people, we ended up in the frame, and they spoke to us about it, and yeah, we were able to come to a deal and an agreement, and they bought our business in July 2023. From that point, I then became the managing director of IAD in the UK. David, my business partner, became our head of Constellation in the UK, managing the first large group of agents that are within the business. And then we got on a steady march from that point in July to roll out the IAD model in the UK, and have been doing that now for just over a year.
Amazing. Thank you. That's a summary and a half. You're definitely, as you said, you're
Quick
definitely a
version.
lifer.
Yeah, that's the quick version.
It's funny to hear you say that you decided to go and start your own business after Sequence, and the first thing you want to do is set up a premises, and the first thing you went to go and do is look for any shops and offices sort of thing. That seems like that's aged quite quickly in some people's estate agency views these days.
Well, 20 years, we're 20 years on now. You know, we were one of the big points of difference that we had when we launched in this market was we were the only agent that advertised on Rightmove. And that was a USP at the time. We'd come from a very aggressive. We were obviously Sequence. We were Connell's owned, so Connell's one of the founding members of Rightmove. So we were Rightmove believers at that time, because we were already experiencing the benefit. And yeah, the local independent agents that we went up against here weren't. And so yeah, we sort of led the charge and of locally the adoption of that, creating competition basically from when we first started in 2004.
I won't ask you how much your Rightmove page cost you back then, because I imagine many estate agents will crash their car into a ditch
Yeah.
when how much it probably cost back then compared to how much it is right now. So when you're going through the Sequence side of things, you mentioned they had good training, good onboarding, and that was a good sort of place to be at the time. Was there any particular sort of advice or sort of ethos you kind of kept with you over the years to come as you sort of grew your own team and scaled and that sort of stuff?
So I think you can't underestimate how pivotal some of the early people in your working life can be, and some of those lasting things that they can leave upon you. So we had two. I had sort of two managers at that point in my very early career. The first one that I was stuffing envelopes from was an independent business owner, and ran his own shop. And one of the first pieces of advice that he gave me, which I hasten to add, I did not take him up on for probably 5 years, was reading a particular book. And the book was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And honestly, I read that 5 years later and thought, what a wally. Like, why didn't I actually take some of that advice? And when I was only 18 at the time, but why wouldn't you just take on some of this stuff that people are giving to you? And then in a similar guys, the two guys that I work really closely with at the independent agent, one of them was a really good, proactive local agent who just built the most dynamic network of people that knew him, and he made it his business to know him within this town. And he was very, very good at it. He had a very good work ethic, and he was on it all the time. And I think we've learned a lot from him around like a pace of work, and an attitude towards that. And then the manager was a 25-year veteran who was cool as a cucumber. They were sort of like chalk and cheese, these two, but he was cool as a cucumber. Everybody gave him respect because of what he had been able to do and achieve, and he was lovely with it. And I think we got a real balance of people in the early stages of my career that I was able to sort of try and emulate, model, and learn from as I went on to build our own teams and build my own business.
Yeah, well, they say you're the average of your five closest friends, but I'm sure that's
Mm,
the
mm.
average of your five closest colleagues as well at works. And it's amazing the amount of stuff you sort of learn from osmosis by just kind of being around them in the same office or hearing them on the phone or
Yeah.
networking, where you just kind of pick those little nuggets up here and there and kind of keep them with you.
Yeah, you do. And it's funny, like I think people start talking the same, they start using the same phrases and things like that. You definitely suck that in from the people around you, good and bad.
Yeah, absolutely. My sister-in-law's partner says, "Do you know what I mean?" quite a lot, and my sister-in-law has started saying, "Do you know what I mean?" And I'm like, "Nope, don't know what you mean." Anyway, so obviously we're now sort of spearheading IAD. So obviously there's a fairly competitive market these days in brokerage models in the UK. You've got your Keller Williams, your EXPs, the Agency UK, the estate agency, all these sort of different brokerage models out there. So what do you think makes IAD? What's the sort of the USP? What makes you different from the rest effectively?
Yeah, so there's a lot that's the same. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot that's the same within each of the brokerage models. I think the idea of empowering and giving the agents the tools to be able to run their own businesses and feel well supported is a fantastic thing. And I think there's choice, which is also important. But there's a few key things that I think IAD offer that are quite different to the others. One, there is no doubt about it. They are the market leader within Europe and run a very collaborative, well-networked business that has a culture of sharing. And that is something that we've benefited from immediately in the UK with the sharing of business, with the sharing of the model, and actually people adopting the model and finding the model through our networks. We've got 20,000 agents now, and the majority of them are in Europe. And that's a really Europe is it's very interconnected to the UK, and there's a lot of movement that happens within that space, and we're really becoming the beneficiaries of that. This network and networking without borders is something that the business really wants to push and is structured in order to be able to achieve that. And like I say, culturally, it's there and it's embedded. We have a very transparent revenue sharing model within our business. So it is very simple. It's very easy to understand. But what it does is it actually gives agents within the business the ability to grow a team should they want to. And they very clearly can see how that team structure would work and how looking after people and mentoring people within their team, they could be the beneficiaries of a share of the income and the revenue that those agents produce. And then thirdly, the teams that people build within this business are a saleable asset. So by building a team with IAD, that team has an organizational value. So it actually gives you a built-in exit route if you ever did want to leave the business. And I think that's very different from some of the other models that are available. There are lots that are the same, don't get me wrong. We have a fantastic CRMs and brilliant technology around us, and all of the marketing tools at your feet. But there are a couple of key things I think that are quite different in our model against some of the others that are available.
Okay, so just kind of play this through. So let's say, for example, we started a business, 2 years ago with yourself, and we grew it to the point where we had a good sort of available sales stock and a good rental book off that side of things. If the person who worked with IAD then decided to sell it, that's their asset to sell effectively. There's not like a franchisor sort of situation where they're like, well, we own your database, we own your log, we own your properties, we own everything sort of thing. It's their asset to sell.
So the organization, yeah, is a saleable asset. So your team and the production of that team, it works and it's a calculated multiple, but that those transactions are happening all the time within the business. You've actually got a ready-made buyer set of up to 20,000 agents that are already within the business that understand this. And there are the ready buyers in the market, but it doesn't have to be from within the network. You can sell it externally as well for somebody that would want to join the network. So I think it gives you options, and it actually builds a bit more of a longer term view and a bit more of a grown up business that will give you something that you're building and something that's got asset value as well.
Yeah,
Or a
absolutely.
legacy.
Well, I think it's really important. It's something that's probably overlooked quite a lot these days is when people first launch a business, they should have a good idea about how they're going to get out of that business down the line. Whether that's in 5 years' time, 50 years' time, or you go literally, I will die with my laser measurer in my hand. That's obviously your choice. But I think the view needs to be on it that you're probably not going to want to do this job forever. And you're going to get to
Mm.
the point where you're 65, 55, whatever it may be, and go, actually, I want to take a step back now and go and live in Spain or whatever else it might be. what are my options going forward? And in some models, you're stuck basically. So it's
Well,
nice
you
to hear
walk
that you've
away,
got
you walk away
improvement.
from it all, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's a problem. But I think that's, you said it absolutely right. One of those sort of slowing down or retirement plays in agency, it means that you don't necessarily have to be doing all of the production all of the time. That element of your business can slow down, but the number of people that you mentor and the number of people that they mentor within the group could grow. Therefore, the revenue that you receive from your organization could soon outweigh the money that you earn from your own personal production. And therefore you can spend more time mentoring, growing and coaching the team than actually necessarily maybe at the other end of it doing the viewings. And don't get me wrong, we've got amazing producers within the business that are doing some great stuff, but we that's not all we offer, and that's one of the points of difference, you know. So I think it's something else to consider when people are looking at the very models.
No, I completely agree. And you've segued me quite nicely with mentioning your network with regard to IAD. So if you look at the top 20% at IAD and what they're doing and what they're producing and results, all that sort of stuff, what do you think separates them from the 80% that probably aren't having the same amount of success?
I think to really make this work, it requires commitment and a level of commitment and focus to doing the right things repetitively. I think estate agency is quite a simple business, but it requires a consistent approach to doing the right things at the right time to get those results. And I think the agents that we've got that do sit in that top 20 to 30% are robustly consistent with the things that they do, whether that's prospecting, whether that's social media marketing, door knocking, networking. They've got a way in which they generate business and they do it day after day, week after week, and it produces those results. The minute they let that go, they end up on the roller coaster ride of a state agency where you go from feast to famine. But actually, the ones that get on really, really well and actually build a fantastic life that's manageable and stable are those people that are consistent in all the things that they do within a state agency.
I think that my view on this is that people are very affected by the incomes into a business. And when I mean incomes, I mean things coming from the outside world into the business effectively. But I think the people that do really well focus more on the outputs that they can have into the world around them. Because ultimately, all you can control is what you do on a daily basis and, fingers crossed for the rest sort of thing. So if you can monitor and do the boring stuff sometimes and go, actually, my kind of remit for the day is I want to do this job, that job, this bit of marketing goes out, that bit of marketing goes out, and this all kind of goes in my sphere outward sort of thing. The back end will come back on it.
Yep.
If I say to you, great, go spend 5 hours on a treadmill every single day, I don't need to worry about you losing weight because I know you've been on a treadmill for five hours a day. Therefore, that result is going to come off the back of it. So, do you think it's the guys that do really well are more in line with what they're doing and what they're producing rather than being affected by what the outcome incoming in their business is?
I actually think, yeah, you're right. And I also think it can be doing less of things, but more repetitively as well. So I think there are so many things that you can preoccupy yourself with, but actually working out in your business over a period what does really work for you and almost doubling down on that, whether that is the networking group that you actually just get loads from or door knocking that you can be really successful at. Prospecting, getting hold of a list and being able to prospect. So I think whatever works for you, commit to it. And I think if you do, that's where you get some real success.
Absolutely
So
not.
I'm particularly confident. that.
That's fine. And I think that the way to look at it from my point of view is that you need to look at the correct chapters at the correct time. So I had quite a how can I put this to the point phone call with a client earlier on today in a nice way, obviously. And I said, they only launched their business 2, 3 weeks ago, sort of thing, very early days going on. And I said, how you been getting on? What's been happening? He's like, well, I had a meeting yesterday with some solicitors about how to improve the conveyancing situation. I've made my plan for completions, and I was like, we don't need to worry about that stuff. Like this is like a future problem. Your problems when you first launch your business are, does anyone know who you are? Let's get some marketing out there. Let's be out and about the local area, networking, marketing, social media, all that sort of stuff. We don't have to worry about those future problems. So do you think the greats in the business know what their today problems are and what then tomorrow problems might be and address those in the right sort of order rather than just going, I've got 45 plates in front of me, everything through from lead generation through to sales progression. Let me see how many I can spin in one go.
Yeah, I think And I think any agent that doesn't have a lead problem has very few other problems. So as long as you get that lead element right, everything else, there are solutions and there are ways around sort of helping smooth that the additional part of the process out. If you fail at the leads element, then the business doesn't start.
Well, absolutely. I think that lead generation is the number one job for pretty much every estate agent out there, sort of thing. If you get loads of leads into your business, if you get 30, 40 market appraisals dropped in your diary today, sort of thing, you could turn up late, you could not take your shoes off, you could forget the homeowner's names halfway around, but you probably still get a good business and instructed off a few of them to make your business work, sort of thing. So the key to it is getting those leads into your business first of all. So you've segued me quite nicely there. So imagine I sign up with IAD today. What is the next step? So what's with regards to kind of the onboarding and sort of signing up process? What's the sort of first couple of months look like being a partner agent with yourselves?
Yeah, so we've got a brilliant onboarding team that work in our agent support section, and they will work on a detailed onboarding plan to take any of our agents from the minute that they sign up right the way through to be a legally compliant and agent ready to go within the business. And they work hand in hand with you throughout that process. You then get access to the online university, which has got hours of content available. It's been curated and worked on by Jason, who works in our head of training and coaching, to be specific for the UK and relevant for any agent that's joining our business. And then beyond that, we have face-to-face training that we host across the country every single month in various locations, and online workshops, which are short 60 to 90-minute workshops that our agents can dive into and access wherever they are in the country, and to get sort of bite-sized chunks of information to be able to help them on that journey. And the very, very important role that you get within IAD at that point is the help and support of the mentor. So nobody that can join the IAD business without a mentor that's already in the business doing the work. And it's their role to be able to support you in this onboarding and launch phase and help you shape and build the business plan that you want to go and address as you launch your property market business.
So how does that relationship look with regard to the mentor and mentee side of things? Because there must be some sort of accountability on both sides. So let's say I'm the mentor and I've been with IAD for a while and I'm doing really well, sort of thing. Obviously, I don't want, the Johnny newbie to kind of drag me down and slow me down, sort of thing. And there must be some sort of accountability if they don't turn up a certain amount of times or something like that. So they're kind of not putting their weight in the deal. So what's the sort of relationship there that you set up from day one?
So there's a full coaching and training program that Jason runs out to anybody that wants to mentor. So mentorship in the IAD business is a choice. So if you want to do it, you go down the mentorship route and you go down the training route before you're then able to bring somebody into the business. Most of the people that bring other people into the business invariably know these people in some way. So they've got some sort of relationship. They all work together. They're related. They're friends. They're colleagues. They're somebody local to them. They will know them to some degree. And it's up to them to build that relationship of how they're going to support each other. And we've got a really clear framework around the coaching relationship, how it works, what you need from me, how we're going to communicate and how we're going to work together so that I can support you on your journey in the way that you want to be supported. So it's a bit of a mutual agreement that it's a grown-up conversation that's had. It's a mutual agreement. There's no management involved. There's nothing like that. And actually, I think you'll find, as I've done in life with employees, and I'm sure you've done with clients, that some people want a really intense relationship where there's lots of communication and regular communication. Some people are quite happy with a once a month chat or a once a quarter lunch just to talk about it. And I think as people go through different stages of their development as an agent, they'll require different things from you. So I think it's important that you review this stuff regularly with your mentor and you have that sort of relationship that suits you both, really.
And just so I've got this clear in my mind, so let's say, for example, I came to you as a relative newish IAD person, and I wanted to bring someone on board. Could I not bring them on board underneath my sort of umbrella unless I've gone through the mentor sort of ship direction, or do you have to? Is that kind of prerequisite to bringing people underneath your umbrella?
Absolutely. So you have to be qualified within the group as a bronze mentor to be able to bring somebody into the organization. And to do that, you have to go on both the online training course and the physical face-to-face training course with Jason in order to be qualified and able to mentor, because it is a different skill set from just your genuine agent. Utilize your genuine agent skills, but there is a different skill set that's required. So we want to make sure that we're providing a decent standard of mentors to everybody within, and giving the mentors the adequate support that they need to be able to be of service to their agents in the right way.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think one of the reasons I like it the most is because if you want to learn anything, whether reading books or listen to podcast, the way to make it sink in your mind the most is actually to teach other people. So if you go on a course and they say this is what you should be doing at this stage, and this stage, and then you have to actually teach that to somebody else, you're more likely to take that away and implement your own business because remember that stuff.
You learn it in a different way somehow, and it really sticks.
Cool. I like that a lot. Sounds really good. So, if you were an estate agent listening to this, which let's face it, it's probably every person who's listening to this podcast right now, and they wanted to make their business more successful, what do you think is the one bit of advice you could pass across to them that they could action today in their business that will help them grow their business to where they want it to be?
I think right now, be really conscious of your costs. It's not really an estate agency thing to say, but actually really look at the costs within your business, and I think you'll be desperately surprised at the things that you're paying for on a monthly basis that you no longer really need, no longer really get great value out of. And I think really explore the bottom line elements of your business before you start going forward and layering things on. Pull out a bank statement, look at all your direct debits, and actually look at the cost base of your business first, because I think costs in our estate agency businesses right now are spiraling, and we need to be really, really careful over that.
Yeah, it's funny. The cash flow for a estate agency can be somewhat up and down, should we say? But certainly that direct debit to whatever lead pro, whatever tech goes out on the first of the month, no matter what sort of thing. So that's kind of regardless.
And it can run away with you. It run away with us at various points in our career, and my life, and actually it's something that I wish sometimes you'd had a better grip on, to make sure that you really feel value, and even stuff that we sort of had a bit of a 50-50 consensus of. You take it away, and 2 months later you no longer miss it, and all of a sudden you've saved £500 a month that it was going out the door. So I think there's some, I'm sure you've heard lots of wonderful sort of estate agency sort of anecdotes as to how you can build your estate agency business, but I think on a pure business to business prospect, and we're all running businesses, is keep a look and a tight eye on the bottom line.
Absolutely. It's all about return on investment. And you'd be amazed the number of people I talk to and I go, oh, what software do you use at the moment? And they list about 4 softwares that do exactly the same thing. They've just never cancelled any of them sort of things.
Yeah.
It happens
And
more than you might think.
maximizing, like some of these softwares do more than you use as well. And you're using like 2 systems for the same thing that you might be able to get out of your one software system. So make sure you're exploring the depths of what you are using, as well as getting rid of what you're not.
That's sound advice. So what's the vision then for IAD in the UK? What's sort of the growth plan, strategy? What's the numbers you want to get to, number of agents, all that sort of stuff? What's the next sort of couple of years, 5 years look like?
Yeah, so over the next 2 years, we want to be one of the top 3 models in the UK in the self-employed space. So there are, as you mentioned at the beginning, there's a couple of other competitors in the market, and we want to be seen as a top 3 choice within that, and top 3 by agent numbers and business transaction levels that we're doing. And that's absolutely one of our big sort of vision standpoints of what we're going for. Within the next 4 years, excuse me, we would plan to be on 500 agents within the business. We've been able to achieve that in each of the other markets that we've grown in globally as we've launched a new business. Globally, one of the ways in which we go about that is the ability for the agents to actually build their own teams. So one of the great things about our business is actually the responsibility to grow the business is almost decentralized, because actually everybody signs the same contract within IAD, and therefore everybody has the same opportunity to bring somebody else into their team and grow it. So actually the sort of the hockey stick effect of growth that we've seen within the business comes from actually the agents within the business realizing the opportunity and actually expanding their own teams. 42% of all IAD agents globally mentor at least one person. The business has a really transparent structure around how that works. And actually it's adopted widely across the network as a way in which it can form an additional revenue stream within your business. So people are really embracing it, and that's why the network can grow so fast. And then sort of more globally, I suppose, from the IAD Group's perspective, there is ambition to go into other countries. Obviously, the UK and the US they're both only a year old now, so they definitely don't rush into any market. They're not opening markets and closing markets if they don't work. They invest a serious amount of investment, and a lot of thought goes into each and every open. So if we do open in another country, we won't be pulling out. So they take a bit more time, and they open a bit more conservatively as businesses get stepped up and running. But there's definitely some more countries on the agenda over the next sort of probably 2 to 4 years out. So that'll be exciting to see as that business grows.
Amazing. Lee, thank you for coming today. You've been very transparent, and thank you for making it through even with your slight cough as well. You've covered it well.
Sorry, it's really got me today. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. Well, thank you for coming on. It's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Lee.
Thanks, mate. Take care. Bye bye.
Thanks so much.